So to get started on this exercise, you should have downloaded the Lesson 3 folder from the class page. You can double-click on the L13 Start Illustrator file. And when you open this up, if you do get a warning saying about the missing fonts, go ahead and say Activate All, and that should apply and download any of the missing fonts that are needed for this design. First thing we need to do is go up to File, and let's do a Save As, and we'll save this as Birthday Invitation, or just Invite, and be sure to put your name on it. We'll keep it in Adobe Illustrator file and hit Save. We'll also say OK to the options. So this lesson is all about using the Appearance panel and how we can apply some special effects to the designs that you have. If we zoom down here to the bottom of the cake, let's use our black arrow direct selection tool to click on this object, and going over to our Properties panel, locate the Appearance section to it. Underneath here, there are 3 dots that'll open up the Appearance panel. Now, both of these do show some of the same things, but this Appearance panel also gives you more options to add and modify anything that you've got selected. It's more than just the stroke and the fill, it's any kind of special effects you've done. Plus, if you open these up, you can do things with the opacity, blending changes, the whole 9 yards. So this is a very powerful panel to have open. So with this object selected, let's change the properties of it. Open up the fill and double click on the fill color. Let's make it this teal blue, and let's change the stroke. Notice that when you click on it, you can also change the size of it here, and we'll bring it all the way down to be 0. In addition to this, go down to your drop shadow. Notice that it's applying a little drop shadow effect to it. If you want to turn off the visibility of it, you can click on the eyeball icon, or if you want to get rid of it altogether, click on the little trash can, and that completely removes it from this design. Now, if I wanted to add other fill patterns to this, let's say I wanted to add some stripes to this design. We want to add a new fill, so clicking on this icon places a new fill directly on top of this area. If we were to turn off visibility, and now it's the same color, so it looks like nothing happened. So I'm going to turn off that one, but let's select this one down below. Clicking on the down options, notice that it has a little stripe pattern, and it will fill it in from here. Now, if I turn on visibility for this one, because it's on top, it's going to cover up the fill that's below it. So I'm going to click on this and drag it down and change the stacking order of both of these. Notice now that this fill is on top, so we're able to see that one. Now this can also be done to text. Let's scroll up and select the birthday bash text that's up here. Notice that when it's selected, it doesn't necessarily give you a fill and stroke. Instead, it shows that these are editable characters. If we wanted to add another color or texture on top of it, let's add a new fill and stroke. Let's change our fill to the little dot pattern that they give to us. Also, we can open up the options for it and click on the word opacity. Let's bump down the opacity of this to be about 40%. If it's off by a little bit, that's okay. Notice that you may have to click away from this in order to see that effect being applied. Additionally, let's add a stroke to this. We'll make it white. Whoops, zoom in. There we go. Now we can make it white. We'll keep it a 1-point stroke, and if necessary, we can round this off. Open up the options for your stroke by clicking on the word stroke, and notice how there's a little sharp edges to everything, so we want to round off these corners to give it a much smoother edge. That's the option to choose. We can click away from this. Now, in addition to applying things to specific fields, we can also make groups of things. I'm going to click on this bottom edge and drag to select this top portion and also the bottom portion of the base, but not the text in between. We want to group this together by going up to Object and Group. Now let's apply an effect to this design. In Illustrator, there's 2 kinds of effects. If you go up to the Effects drop-down menu, notice that there's Illustrator and Photoshop effects. The Illustrator effects are applied to the vectors that they have, and they will not rasterize it. Let's choose Stylize and Drop Shadow. This will open up the Drop Shadow editing menu, and make sure Preview is turned on. We're going to keep it at the default multiply with an opacity of 20%, an offset of X at 0, and a Y offset of 0.03. Finally, we'll do a blur of 0.03 as well. Notice that you may have to click away from these in order to see the effect being changed. Once it's done, we can say OK. Check out our appearance panel. Notice that the appearance is of the group, and the entire group is what receives the drop shadow. Now, any effects that you apply are known as live effects. This simply means that you can edit them later on. If I selected the birthday text, I can also go up to Effect, and I can apply the same drop shadow that I did the last time. So if I click on this, notice that it's applied to the appearance overall of the entire letters. However, it's a little bit hard to see. If you want to edit an effect, don't ever go back up to the Effects drop-down menu. Instead, head over to the Appearance panel and click on the Drop Shadow effect here. Once this is done, then you can type in the changes that you want to make. Let's make this one 40% with an X and Y offset of 0.01. We'll do the same for X as well, 0.01. There we go. And we'll set the blur of 0.02. Now that we changed this up, make sure preview is turned on and we can say OK. And now you can see that drop shadow a little bit better. What's also interesting about the effects is that you can apply them not to just the overall design, but to individual portions of it. We can take this drop shadow and drag it until it's below the stroke. And now, once we deselect it, you'll be able to see it a little bit better. The stroke can be just applied to the drop shadow. Whoops, looks like it didn't take. Let's try it again. One more time. Drag it, place it right on top of the stroke. There we go. Now the drop shadow is applied to just the stroke on the inside of it. With our text still selected, make sure Type is selected up here. We can find more effects at the bottom of the Appearance panel by clicking on the little FX button. From here, let's select the Warp, and let's do an Arc Upper. This will bend everything at the very top of it. From here, let's set our Arc Upper to be about 15% with a 0, let's do 15. 0 and 0 for horizontal and vertical bend. We can say OK to this. Now, since these are live effects, at any time you can go back and edit your text. So if I wanted to grab my Type tool, I can highlight, say, the little exclamation point and delete it, and it will automatically update the text that's here. We'll simply deselect so we can see it. And remember, at any time, if you want to disable these effects just to see what the original are, you can click on the little eyeball icon, as long as you've got it selected. There we go. And you can see kind of a before and after of what that effect would look like. Now, when applying Photoshop effects, these can also be found at the bottom of the effects panel, and they work very similar to the Photoshop filters that are used in Photoshop. One thing to note, and the book doesn't really cover this, make sure to open your document's raster effect settings. Since these settings apply to the pixel-based artwork, these are going to rasterize some of the things that you've done. Make sure the resolution is set nice and high. So I'm going to set mine to 300 ppi, pixels per inch, and you can keep the transparency and everything else set to the same. And we'll say OK to this. This is going to change up how these effects are applied. So for instance, let's go up here to the very top and select both of these little flames. We want to apply a grain filter to it. So let's go up to Effect, down to Texture, and choose Grain. From here, you may have to zoom in order to see it a little bit better. Make sure that there's only one thing set here, so there's grain for this one. And we can play around with the settings of it. You can find this effects, again, in the texture settings here. Playing around with the intensity and the contrast will give you some slightly different results depending on what we've got. So let's set the intensity to 51, the contrast could be 100, and the grain type will be contrasty. You can see how it adds little speckles to here. And we'll say OK to this. Now, if yours looks slightly different from what I have, that's okay. Just make sure your document raster settings are set to that high resolution. Now, some effects are a little bit easier to work with than others. Probably some of the hardest ones are the 3D effects. Let's go back down to our little base, and with our selection tool, I'm going to double click on it and then select just this base portion here. Notice that we're in isolation mode, so I can just get this part of the group. Let's go up to Effect, down to 3D and Materials, and let's choose the Extrude and Bevel. Now, this particular effect makes your vector artwork look like it's a 3D rendering. There are some things that are easy to use and some things that are difficult, so we're going to keep this as simple as possible. Notice that you can change up your object's orientation and setting, and then you can start to apply different materials and even change up the lighting for the surface of it. Under the Object menu, let's make sure the depth of this is set to 15 pt for 15 points, and you can click away from it. If it converts back over to inches, that's okay. Next, we can open up Bevel and turn on the bevel. We want to keep this a step bevel with a width of 40%, and let's set the height of it to be at 30%. We can keep it at the default repeat of 1. Finally, scrolling on down, let's do the rotation. We'll set the rotation of the x-axis to be at 50%, or 50 degrees, excuse me. We can set the y at 0 and also the z at 0. Finally, let's set our perspective at 160. Next, let's go back up to the top and choose Materials. These allow you to add different substances, and we want to scroll down under the All Materials at the very bottom, and let's apply the the larch wood to it. This will add a little wood texture to its design. Scrolling down, you can see there's lots of different options for it. Let's have it repeat this every 120%. And we want to change the wood color to be a little bit lighter, and let's make it kind of a lighter brown. We'll say okay to that. Finally, we can go up to the lighting preset and choose diffused so that we can see it without having a little sheen to the top of it. With this done, we can close out our 3D materials, and let's get out of isolation mode by backing up to our artwork and then zoom out to see the whole thing. The last thing deals with saving graphic styles. If you select the number 3 at the top, you can see that there's a set of styles that have been applied to this. There's been a new fill, and that fill has a transformation applied to it. We want to do the same thing to this 0. Now, in order to use styles, open up the Graphic Styles panel. And if you don't see it here, you can go up to Window and find the graphic styles from this one. With the 3 selected, we can save up all of these styles by clicking on the little plus sign. And you can see how it adds it to here. We can then select our 0, and in one click, it automatically applies all those styles to it. From here, we can also make edits to here. So for instance, if we wanted the drop shadow to not be a red, let's change it over to that teal. There it is, set to there. Then we can go back to our graphic styles, and in order to create a new one or to update this one, we can drag this into here, and automatically it creates a new one that lets us apply it to the other one as well. So saving graphic styles is just like saving any kind of paragraph or character styles. Those can be applied and placed up there. The final thing I'll point out is being able to scale graphic styles as well as strokes. Clicking on the little table at the bottom, double click on it so we can go in isolation mode and get this little set of scallops. Remember, if you want to scale anything up with it selected, you can go to your Transform panel and open up the options. Notice that Scale Stroke and Effects is an option. This means with it selected, when you scale things up, both the effect and the scaling of it is also going to scale up too. Actually, I'm going to click on this bottom right corner and drag it until it matches this edge. Otherwise, when you scale everything up, it's going to remain the same width and settings that you have. From there, once it's set, let's go back out of isolation mode, and we're all set to do everything with this. Let's go up to File and do one last save, and this is what you're going to turn into the class page when you're finished.